What would I have to do?" she whispered. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I have a condition, Amara. A private health issue. Doctors have been no help. It's a problem that affects my energy, my vitality." He chose his words carefully. "I have discovered by accident that your presence has a calming effect."
"Take off your clothes," he said, his voice calm and even.
Chief Adeleke Coker was a king in Lagos. His company, Coker Holdings, owned half the city's skyline. He had mansions in every rich neighborhood, cars that cost more than most people's homes, and a wife, Funke, who was a society queen, beautiful and perfect for the cameras. From the outside, his life was a dream, but inside, in the place where a man is supposed to be a man, he was a ghost. 5 years ago, it had just stopped. One day he had everything. The next, his body betrayed him. His manhood, once a source of pride and power, became a useless, lifeless thing. He saw the best doctors in the world. They ran tests in London, in America, in Germany. They all said the same thing. "Physically, Chief, you are perfectly healthy. It must be stress." Stress? He laughed at the word. He ate stress for breakfast. Stress did not build an empire like his. But this problem, this was not stress. This was a curse. He became a cold man. His laughter, once loud and easy, disappeared. He became short-tempered with his staff and distant with his wife. Funke, at first, was concerned. She suggested prayers, traditional herbs, anything to help. But as months turned into years, her concern turned into frustration, and then into a quiet, resentful distance. They slept in the same massive bed, two strangers, separated by a cold, invisible wall. She started spending more time at her charity events and with her society friends. Chief Adeleke didn't care. It was easier that way. He tried everything. He secretly brought different women to his private penthouse, hoping one of them could wake the dead part of him. Young women, old women, models, actresses, nothing. It was like trying to start a car with a dead engine. The shame ate him alive. He, Chief Adeleke Coker, the lion of Lagos business, was not a complete man. It was a secret he would kill to protect. His office was his only kingdom now. At Coker Holdings, he was still the king. His word was law. He was sharp, ruthless, and brilliant. He buried himself in work, from dawn until late at night, because in the boardroom he felt powerful. The only thing that mattered there was his mind, and his mind was still sharp as a razor. That morning he was in a terrible mood. A billion-naira deal was facing problems, and he had been shouting at his managers all morning. They scurried out of his office like frightened rats when he was done. He leaned back in his massive leather chair, rubbing his temples. The huge glass window behind him showed a panoramic view of Lagos, a city he owned, yet he felt like he owned nothing. A soft knock came on the door. "What is it?" he barked, his voice rough. The door opened slowly, and his secretary, Amara, slipped in. She was a quiet, almost invisible girl. She had been working for him for about 6 months. She was plain, not like the flashy women he knew. She always wore simple, modest dresses and kept her hair in a neat bun. She was efficient, organized, and never made mistakes. He barely noticed her, which was exactly how he liked it. "Sir?" she said, her voice soft and low. She never looked him directly in the eye. "You have a meeting with the investors from Dubai in 30 minutes. And your coffee, sir." She placed the steaming mug on his desk, her hand shaking just a little. He hated when his staff showed fear, but with her, it was different. It wasn't the fear of a rat, but the quiet nervousness of a bird. He grunted, not looking at her. "The files for the meeting." "They are on your tablet, sir. I have highlighted the key sections you asked for," she replied. He glanced at her then. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. For the first time, he noticed the small details. the worn-out strap of her cheap handbag, the way she held her hands clasped together, as if to stop them from trembling. She was poor, it was obvious, but she had a quiet dignity about her. He said, "Leave it," dismissing her. She turned to leave, but as she reached the door, her worn-out shoe caught on the edge of the thick Persian rug. She gasped, stumbling forward, and a stack of papers she was holding flew into the air, scattering all over the floor. She froze, her eyes wide with panic. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, sir. So sorry." She immediately dropped to her knees and began frantically gathering the papers, her hands shaking badly now. An old anger, hot and familiar, rose in Adelake's chest. He was about to yell at her, to call her a clumsy fool, and maybe even fire her on the spot. He hated incompetence. He stood up, his shadow falling over her small, kneeling form. He opened his mouth to shout, but then something strange happened. As she reached for a paper near his leg, her fingers accidentally brushed against the fabric of his trousers, just for a second. It was nothing, a touch lighter than a feather. But in the dead, silent core of his body, something flickered. It was a feeling so foreign, so long forgotten, that he almost didn't recognize it. A tiny, deep-seated twitch, a spark of life in the cold darkness. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. It couldn't be. It was impossible. He must have imagined it. Emira, completely unaware, continued to gather the papers, her head bowed in shame. "I'm so sorry, sir. It won't happen again." He couldn't speak. His mind was racing. He stared down at the top of her head, at the simple bun of her hair. This girl? This plain, poor, nervous little secretary? After all the beautiful women, all the models, all the money he had spent? He felt another flicker, stronger this time, a slow, unbelievable stirring of life. His heart began to pound in his chest, a heavy drum against his ribs. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He took a step back and sank into his chair, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and shock. "Get out," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Emira looked up, her eyes filled with fear and confusion. She thought he was firing her. She quickly gathered the last of the papers, scrambled to her feet, and practically ran out of the office, closing the door softly behind her. Chief Adeleke Cocker sat alone in his massive office, the king on his empty throne, but for the first time in 5 long, cold years, the throne didn't feel quite so empty anymore. A terrifying, impossible hope had just been born. For a full 10 minutes, Chief Adeleke did not move. He sat behind his fortress of a desk, staring at the closed door, his mind a total blank. The pounding in his chest was the only sound he could hear. It felt like a drumbeat for a war that had just begun inside him. Did that really happen? He slowly looked down at his own body, a place he had learned to ignore, a territory he had surrendered. For 5 years, it had been a dead land. But now, after that girl's touch, a ghost of a feeling lingered. It was like seeing a single green shoot in a desert. It was so impossible that he couldn't trust his own senses. He tried to summon the feeling again by himself. He closed his eyes, concentrated, thought of the most beautiful women he had ever known. Nothing. The cold, familiar emptiness was still there. He thought about the touch, the brief, accidental brush of her fingers on his trousers. Still nothing. The flicker of life was gone, as if it had never been there. Frustration and despair, his old companions, washed over him. He must have imagined it, a desperate mind playing tricks on him. He slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. The sound echoed in the silent, expensive office. He stood up and walked to the large glass wall that separated his office from the rest of the floor. From here, he could see everything, like a god looking down on his creation. He saw his employees typing, talking on the phone, moving with purpose. And then he saw her. Amara was back at her desk, just outside his office. She was typing, her head bent in concentration. She was small and insignificant in the grand, bustling office. He watched her, really watched her for the first time. He noticed the way she bit her lower lip when she was focused. He saw the neat, simple way she had arranged her pens and notepad. She was a creature of quiet order. There was nothing special about her, nothing at all. She was not a beauty queen. She did not have the curves or the confident swagger of the women he knew. So why? Why her? Was he going mad? The investors from Dubai. He had completely forgotten. His mind, usually a sharp weapon in these meetings, was a chaotic mess. He couldn't think about contracts or percentages. He could only think about the impossible spark. He had to know for sure. He needed to test it. He needed another touch. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. His voice was steady, betraying none of the storm raging inside him. Amara, come in here. Bring the physical copy of the Al-Hator proposal. A few seconds later, she replied, her voice small through the speaker. Yes, sir. He watched as she stood up, retrieved a thick file from a cabinet, and walked towards his door. His heart started to pound again, a wild, hopeful rhythm. He sat down, trying to look calm and busy, like the powerful chief he was supposed to be. She came in, quiet as a mouse, and placed the file on his desk. She kept a careful distance from him this time, as if she were afraid of the very air around him. Thank you, he said, his voice a low rumble. He opened the file, pretending to read. He needed an excuse. His eyes scanned the room and landed on a sleek silver pen lying near the edge of his desk. Perfect. He kept his eyes on the file. I also need you to check my schedule for tomorrow. See if I can move the meeting with the governor to the afternoon. Yes, sir, she said, pulling out her small notepad. As she looked down to write, he casually reached for the silver pen and with a deliberate nudge of his finger, knocked it off the desk. It clattered onto the floor and rolled to a stop right beside his expensive leather shoe. Amara looked up, startled by the sound. Clumsy of me, Adeleke said, not looking at her. His voice was smooth as silk, but his insides were coiled tight like a spring. Pick that up for me, will you? Of course, sir. She moved towards him. Time seemed to slow down. He watched her every move. She bent down, her simple dress pulling tight across her back. She was so close now. The faint, clean scent of her soap reached him. It was a simple, inexpensive smell, nothing like the heavy perfumes his wife wore. Her hand reached for the pen. As her fingers closed around it, he shifted his leg just slightly, a tiny, calculated movement. Her knuckles brushed against his ankle. It was for less than a second, a touch so light, so insignificant, anyone else would have missed it. But for Chief Adeleke Oker, it was like a bolt of lightning. The feeling came back, not as a flicker this time, but as a definite, undeniable surge, a powerful shock of life traveling up from his core, spreading warmth through his veins. It was real. It was happening again. His body, his dead body, was responding to her, only to her. A choked sound escaped his throat. Amara froze, her hand still on the floor. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with alarm. Sir, are you all right? He couldn't answer. He was staring at her, but he wasn't seeing a plain secretary anymore. He was seeing a miracle, a key, the answer to 5 years of hell. His mind was exploding with possibilities, with a dawning, terrifying hunger. He felt a dizzying rush of power, a power he thought he had lost forever. He had to get her out, Now, before he did something reckless, before the shock and elation on his face gave him away. He snatched the pen from her hand, his fingers brushing hers. Another jolt. Stronger. He stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. "Get out!" he roared, his voice cracking with an emotion she couldn't possibly understand. Amara scrambled to her feet, her face pale with fear. She thought she had done something terribly wrong. Tears welled up in her eyes. Without another word, she turned and fled from the office, the thick door clicking shut behind her. Chief Adeleke stood in the middle of his kingdom, breathing heavily. He was alive. After 5 years in a tomb, he was finally, shockingly, alive. And the key to his resurrection was his poor, terrified secretary. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. He didn't understand how or why. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that he had found the cure. And now he would not, could not, let her go. Amara sat at her desk, her entire body trembling. She was going to be fired. That was the only explanation. Twice in one day, the big boss, Chief Adeleke Coker, had yelled at her to get out. The first time she had been clumsy. The second time, she didn't even know what she had done wrong. She had just picked up his pen. Her heart felt like a cold, heavy stone in her chest. She couldn't lose this job. It was the best job she had ever had. The salary was barely enough to cover the rent for the small room she shared with her younger sister and to send a little money back to her village for her sick mother's medicine, but it was steady. Without it, they would be lost. She blinked back tears, staring at her computer screen without seeing the words. Every time the phone rang, she jumped. Every time someone walked past her desk, she thought it was security coming to escort her out. Inside his office, Chief Adeleke was a changed man. The fog of depression and anger that had clouded his life for 5 years was gone. In its place was a sharp, electrifying clarity. He felt like a general on a battlefield who had just discovered the enemy's secret weakness. Amara. She was the key. He didn't know how. He didn't know why, but the facts were undeniable. Her touch, and only her touch, brought him back to life. He couldn't fire her. Firing her would be like a starving man throwing away the only piece of bread in the world. He needed her close. He needed access to her. But how? He couldn't just walk up to her and say, "Please touch me so I can feel like a man again." She would think he was a madman. She would run. He needed a plan, a strategy. And Chief Adeleke was a master strategist. He watched her through the glass wall. He saw the fear in her posture, the way she kept glancing nervously towards his office. He saw her worn but clean black shoes. He saw the simple, faded fabric of her dress. He saw the worry etched on her young face. She was poor, and she was scared. He could use that. He would use that. Money was a language everyone understood, and he was the most fluent speaker in the country. At 5:55 p.m., he made his move. He sent a company-wide email. The subject line was, "Urgent Server Maintenance." The email stated that due to a critical system upgrade, all staff, with no exceptions, were to leave the building by 5 p.m. sharp. A buzz went through the office. People were happy to leave early. They started packing their bags, shutting down their computers, and chattering as they headed for the elevators. Within minutes, the huge, bustling office floor grew quiet. Soon, only one person remained, Amara. She was packing her things slowly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She probably thought she wouldn't be coming back tomorrow.
Adeleke waited until the last person was gone. The floor was silent and empty. The setting sun cast long shadows across the rows of empty desks. Then he pressed the intercom. Amara. Her head snapped up. She looked around the empty office, then towards his door, her eyes wide with dread. "Yes, sir?" Her voice was a tiny, trembling whisper. "Come into my office. Close the door behind you," he commanded. Her walk to his office was the longest walk of her life. Every step was heavy. This was it. He was going to fire her in private to avoid a scene. She took a deep breath, held her cheap handbag tightly, and pushed open the heavy door. She stepped inside and closed it behind her, the soft click echoing in the vast, silent room. Chief Adeleke was not sitting behind his desk. He was standing by the massive window, looking out at the city lights beginning to sparkle below. He looked huge and powerful, a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. He didn't turn to look at her for a long time. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and low. "How much do we pay you, Amara?" The question surprised her. "Sir?" He turned around. His eyes were intense, and for the first time she saw that he wasn't angry. He was looking at her with a strange, focused curiosity, like a scientist studying a rare specimen. "Your salary. How much is it?" he asked again. 150,000 naira a month, sir," she mumbled, ashamed of how small it sounded in that room. He nodded slowly. "And you have family you support?" Tears pricked her eyes. How did he know? "Yes, sir. My mother and my sister." "Your mother is sick, isn't she?" She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Sir, how do you know?" "I am the boss of this company, Amara. I make it my business to know things," he said simply. He walked towards his desk and sat down, not in his big chair, but on the edge of the desk, closer to her. It was a power move, and it made her feel even smaller. "I am not going to fire you." A wave of relief so strong it almost made her knees buckle, washed over her. "Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. I promise I will be more careful. Shh, shh." He interrupted, holding up a hand. "I am going to make you an offer. A new position. It comes with a new salary." He paused, letting his words sink in. 5 million naira. A month. Amara's brain stopped working. She stared at him, sure she had heard him wrong. 5 million? A month? That was more money than her entire village made in a year. It was a number so large it felt like a dream. "Sir, I don't understand," he stammered. "The job is simple," he continued, his voice dropping lower. "It's to be my personal assistant. Very personal and very confidential. You will report only to me. What we do, what we discuss, will never leave this room. You will tell no one, not your sister, not your mother, no one. In return for your silence and your service, you will be a rich woman." Her mind was racing. What kind of service? What did he want? A cold fear mixed with the dizzying thought of the money. She thought of her mother's hospital bills, of getting her sister into a good university, of never having to worry about rent again. What would I have to do?" she whispered. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I have a condition, Amara. A private health issue. Doctors have been no help. It's a problem that affects my energy, my vitality." He chose his words carefully. "I have discovered by accident that your presence has a calming effect." It made no sense, but she was too scared and confused to question it. "A calming effect? So you just want me to be around you?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. "Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I may need your assistance in other ways." He leaned forward slightly. "For example, sometimes I get severe muscle cramps, a side effect of my condition." He pointed to his leg, "Like right now, a terrible cramp in my calf." He winced, a convincing look of pain on his face. "Help me up, Amara, your hand." He held out his hand to her. She hesitated. Her instincts were screaming that this was wrong, this was strange, but the number kept flashing in her mind. 5 million naira. It was a lifeline. It was a miracle. Slowly, timidly, she reached out and placed her small hand in his large one.